Well, good morning, Georgianna. Welcome to this week's Take 5. I'm Pastor Ryan, in case you don't know me, and thanks so much to Pastor Corky for letting me jump in and really round out this Take 5 series that you all have been on. You've been looking at these really powerful examples of courageous faith throughout Scripture. And today, for our last one, I want to look at a story that is probably familiar to you. You've probably heard of this before, but there's a piece of this story that I really want to hone in on because it is a crucial ingredient to what courageous faith really means. And so let's jump into it. So again, probably a familiar story. There's these three guys in the book of Daniel, and their names are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they find themselves in exile. So Israel has been kind of taken out of their homeland. They're in exile with the Babylonians. And so you have these three guys who are really foreigners in a foreign land. And what happens in this foreign land is you have a king named Nebuchadnezzar, and the king builds this big golden statue. And he wants to make everyone bow down to this statue. So when the music starts, everyone is supposed to bow down and worship this statue. And these three Israelite boys are good Israelites. They're not going to do that. It's one of the big 10 commandments. You don't bow down to idols, and you certainly don't have any other gods before our God. And so the music starts. They don't bow down. And then you have some other folks who tell on them. Everybody loves a good tattletale, right? They tell on them and they say, hey, there's some Israelites here who are not doing what they're supposed to do. They're not listening. And so they bring the king and they let him know what's going on. And the king pulls them in front of him and he says, you know what? We're going to try this again. The music's going to start and you're going to bow down in front of this idol. And if you don't, you're going to go into a fiery furnace, right? We'll see how you like that. And so basically, here is their response. So they're in front of King Nebuchadnezzar, and here's their response. So Daniel chapter 3, starting at verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. How's that for courageous faith? We don't even need to defend ourselves. Verse 17, if we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. And so again, you may know the end of this story. They get thrown into the blazing furnace. The king looks in and he says, hey, wait, I thought I threw three people in there. There's actually a fourth. And what's more is the fourth one kind of looks like a son of the gods. Gee, I wonder who that could be. But as inspiring as the story is and how great it is that things work out well for these three guys, there's one piece of the story that sometimes we'll read right past if we're going through it real fast or we think we know the story. But look back, start at verse 17, and this is their response one more time. If we're thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But here it is, verse 18, this crucial ingredient. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. Even if he does not. I think courageous faith has this element of even if he does not, right? Even if things don't work out perfectly for me, I'm still going to have faith in God. I'm still going to be true to God. And so if your faith doesn't have that, even if he does not element to it, then I would wonder, do we really have faith? Do we really have courageous faith? If you only have faith when things are going well for you, when the blessings are showering down, when the sun is shining, all this sort of stuff, then it's not really courageous faith you have transactional faith. As long as God is doing for you, then you will in turn do for him. You will have faith in him. This is transactional faith. And I think real, true faith has that element of, hey, even if things don't always work out, I'm still going to have faith in God. I mentioned in a sermon a few weeks ago that we have friends who, and this just kind of tears your heart out, they just lost a 9-year-old daughter to leukemia. I mentioned this a few weeks ago. And as I'm reading their Facebook post, I'm certainly sad, and it's incredibly tragic, but I'm super inspired by their faith. They had this even if he does not faith that they would lead out with. Even if she's not healed, they're still going to give God all the glory. That's the sort of faith that I want to strive to. And I don't always make it. I'm not perfect. I don't always get there, but that is what I want to look to, that even if he does not, faith. And this is something that you see throughout Scripture. So later on in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul, he writes this. He says, I'm not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or living in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. Paul has this even if he does not faith. Even if he's not living in plenty, he will still have faith in Jesus. And so what does it look like for you to have this even if he does not faith? I think that's just a powerful, crucial ingredient, and it's an extraordinarily challenging ingredient. But how do we have faith in who God is, not simply just what he does for us? We can have faith because God is simply who God is. God is all-powerful, God is in charge, and he knows what he's doing. And because of that, we can have even if he doesn't sort of faith. And so I hope that that's something that you can work on. It's something that I can always work on. This is a message that we can hear over and over and over again because it is challenging. But I pray that you can have, even if he does not, sort of faith. And you can worship God and you can stay faithful to God because of who he is, not just what he does. So church, I love you. We'll be back next week. We're going to start a new series on Colossians next week. We'll see you then.